Beach Talk Radio.
Lee County Commissioner Ray Sandelli.
I wanted to thank you because when I started on this path from the governor, one of the first things I did was your podcast, and it was a lot of fun. And you asked me questions that made me think about what people wanted.
Beach Talk Radio.
Jim Nickel, I did want to take a moment while I'm here to say thank you very much for your kind words during that election. I did have a chance to come up and say thank you right afterwards, and I do appreciate the opportunity to say that.
Beach Talk Radio.
Federal Judge Steve McGuire is here.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me on the show. It's always great to be in Fort Myers Beach, and I'm honored to ask to be a part of such an acclaimed program.
Beach Talk Radio.
Dr. Wayne Edson.
I just want to say, Ed, that I support your show. I think you're providing a great service to Fort Myers Beach. Our local politicians may not always feel that way, but hang in there, because I learned a long time ago, politicians are temporary.
They put the B in business. This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
And a good morning, everybody, and welcome to Beach Talk Radio, episode number 176. We're back live at Pete's Timeout after 1 week off. We'll give you a complete COVID update at the end of the show, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that because it's going to be riveting and exciting. But we're really excited to be back for episode 176. We had Kevin Ruane with us to talk about the water issues. I first want to thank everybody who reached out and made sure I didn't die last weekend. You know, everybody from Jim Adderholt, Dan Allers, Jim Nickel, Brian Hammond, Bill Veach, everybody, all you guys that were listening and watching. And even there was a Canadian couple that came to Pete's last weekend. Angie didn't get their names, but they were looking for us and we weren't here, and they went back to Canada. So thank you to everybody. Hope the sound is good and everything. Everybody's doing well, and so it's nice to be back.
Yeah, you had a lot of well wishes.
Yeah.
So that was super nice of everybody.
Yeah. And before we get to Kevin, introducing Kevin, we want to get one of our great sponsors out of the way. And I did want to make sure that
out of the way.
Well, get it out of the way nice and early so we can keep the flow going. I want to thank Best Western, our newest sponsor, joined us. I don't even know if you knew that, but Tim at Best Western joined us as a new sponsor on the website. And Sanibel Carts is back, and all the sponsors that have stuck with us. We haven't lost any along the way. So tell everybody about.
First,
go ahead.
I want to also say that I did a little test with the Island Oils Don't Itch It.
Oh, yeah.
Did you post that video?
No, not yet.
So I went out into some of the Conservation 2020 land around here in Lee County, and I was obviously underwater. There was a lot of water, so I had my high water boots on. And, obviously with standing water comes bugs. And I went out there with nothing, got crushed, ran screaming back to the car, got the Don't Itch It, put it on. And you can see the video where it
helped.
Made a huge difference.
A
huge difference. Now, I got a little worried about snakes and stuff, so I scooty booted out of there after about 30 minutes, but it held and it worked. There's no way I could have gotten through that. I mean, it worked.
I don't think
in the
Don't
swamp.
Itch It works for snakes.
No, it doesn't work for
Running
snakes.
fast probably works for snakes.
Well, not in those big boots. You can't run fast. So
all right. Well, we'll save all that for later because Kevin is here and we don't want to keep him waiting. But without any further ado, let's introduce our guest for the show today. He was the mayor of Sanibel for 11 years, 14 years with the town council or the city council over in Sanibel, and most recently elected to the county board. And right out of the gate at the first meeting, you were appointed.
Well, wait a minute. We were talking about it just a minute ago that this was a 60-day original assignment, correct?
Correct. So what most people don't know is there was an opening on city council, and I was asked to fill that for 60 days. Turned to my wife, Doreen, and said I could do it for 60 days, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow.
So there you go.
What's it like now that you're at the county level compared to the city of Sanibel? Is it the same amount of time that you put in? Is it more time that you that you have to dedicate to that? What's the difference?
Well, it's only been 9 months, so it's been a lot more time because dealing with three different issues. One, obviously, I walk in and there's a pandemic and we're dealing with vaccinations. We have to do mass vaccinations, which the county never was assigned to do or never planned on doing. It was going to go through the medical community. So let's remember that. The second thing we run into, obviously, is the water issue that we're having. And this issue has been something near and dear to my heart. And then the third issue, obviously, is our budget, which is, the entire budget is $2.1 billion. So it's taken a long time to go through that process and understand it. So it's been busier than I ever anticipated.
So sort of baptism by fire, huh?
Well, the good news is having 14 years of government experience, it's just you're dealing with a much bigger enterprise.
Well, and you had experience dealing with crises especially with water.
Water was really the crisis. I came in 2007 to 3 feet of red drift algae, which was really a result of the storms from Hurricane Charlie, Gene, Irma, Wilma, and that's how we came up with Laws 2008.
Well, let's not jump ahead because there's a couple of things I'm interested in. So you get to your first county board meeting, Kevin, and Brian Hammond at the time was the chairperson, and all of a sudden you're the chairperson. Like, there's no way you could know that.
Did you anticipate that?
Well, you can't know it because of the sunshine law. So
no, you have no knowledge whatsoever. So, I had run meetings in Sandoval for 11 years. They run differently. They're a little bit, they're certainly a much better organization because they have the resources.
Right.
When you're that big of an entity, it's a lot different. So I've enjoyed the 9 months I've been there.
So tell the people like some of the resources that they might not know about, like the communication center, the PIO department is excellent. The center, I don't know if that's the right word, but when the hurricanes hit,
Emergency Operations Center.
Talk about that people might not know about.
So initially when I was obviously put in office, we met at the EOC because that's the way the vaccines were pushed out. So 67 counties would get on a TV on Monday. You'd see it live. And we'd start to say, okay, what do we have? What's our dosage going to be this week? How do we deploy it? And come up with a plan of execution. And we miserably failed. And everyone knew that. We had lines for days. So that didn't work. But we were told, put as many sticks in arms. Vaccinate as many people as possible. And if you do, you'll get more. I mean, that was kind of the way it was directed. So the EOC is a phenomenal place. We're actually going through a major renovation of almost $25 million.
Oh, wow.
Because everybody uses that. So all 6 cities use it. Okay. The sheriff's office uses it. So we all go there. The local delegation uses it. So when there's an emergency of any sort, we use that center as our hub to try to communicate. We'll never go down. We have power. We have unbelievable communication abilities, internet, all the things that you need during a crisis.
Sanibel has a 10 o'clock meeting this morning. You're talking about the vaccines. It looked like they were talking about COVID. Are you concerned about what you see going on out there with COVID, or how do you think everybody's handling from the county to the governor?
I mean, I believe that, people have to step up in their responsibility. We've done everything we could to have as many sites for vaccines. And I encourage people to get vaccines because the choices are get a shot in your arm. And we all have probably put something worse in our body. I can guarantee you that. So go put that in, and be part of the solution. Let's just do that. For a lot of reasons, people are hesitant to that. I'm not a big person in imposing government and controlling your life because there's a point where we have to have a separation. And I do believe that. I think the governor's done a great job because let's understand one thing. Everybody wants to work. You want to have a purpose on why you get up in life. And you don't want to sit home. You don't want to watch Netflix for the next 2 years. And we really can't go through another lockdown.
Right.
I mean, it crushed our economy.
Right.
And we can't just continue to print money.
Right.
And that's just not realistic. So are there things you can do? Absolutely. Are there more restrictions that might come in? Maybe, perhaps. I mean, I would just like to see people get vaccinated. That's my own personal opinion. And I'm not here advertising for that, but I think that's the easiest solution of everything.
So the real quick, before we talk about the water, the main issue, Ray Sandelli's on vacation and it's the beach is his district. Is there anything you can tell us about the Estero Boulevard lighting that maybe the people watching don't know?
Sure. Well, I mean, a long time ago, Commissioner Kiker made an agreement with Fort Myers Beach that there was 42 crosswalks and crossways that the county would be responsible for in making sure we illuminated. But we would work collaboratively with Fort Myers Beach so they would actually do the rest of the lighting. I know they're going through a study right now. I know they're trying to work with the county. And I know it's going to be a very expensive proposition. But that price change didn't change when Commissioner Kiker at the time entered into the agreement saying the county would step up and do it.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you for that. So the main issue is the water.
It's tough
And
water.
you want to ask
No,
the
no,
first
go
question
ahead.
because we've got
I know that you have been doing your due diligence.
Yeah.
I've been very proud of you.
The county board is not happy with the way things are looking right now with the choice that the Army Corps of Engineers CC the choice. Why?
So let's go back, and there was over 1,200 models that were run. When they came up with the 5 alternatives, we were very straight and transparent. We don't like any of them. So I sent a pretty strong letter with the county's blessing, all the county commissioners, that none of these plans worked. CC, the problem with CC is it takes care of the low flow issues that Lee County needs or the West Coast needs. And unfortunately, if you look at any 10-year wet period, and again, I came in under baptism. I came in after 04, 05, wet periods was exactly what we experienced. We'll actually receive 50% more high flows than we did in Laws 2008, which I never thought I'd wait 13 years to see a document come together, and we're going to actually receive more high flows. And I've seen the crippling effects of these high flows. I dealt with red tide on Sanibel when I was literally removing tens of thousands of millions of fish.
Explain low flow and high flow for anyone that might not know.
Say.
So the West Coast needs salinity, and what we have is, so let's go back in time. Lake O was not initially hooked up to the Caloosahatchee River, okay? They changed the structure, they changed the design, they widened it. As a result of that, you have a salinity issue where you need fresh water, and you need fresh water to actually balance the salinity, because too high of a salinity is actually bad for seagrasses and oyster bays and all that. So you need to have low flow. So the West Coast always needs some water.
Okay.
And we need, in a perfect world, about 750 to 1,000 CFS. And then on the high flow issue, we obviously don't want too much water. So, one of the issues is, and the confusion is, well, you take something from the lake, you, the West Coast, on the low flow issues, so you should receive more on the high flow issues. And that's not correct, because we didn't initially hook up to Lake Okeechobee.
Mm-hmm.
The counter argument is, the East Coast would clearly say that we benefit, but when they changed the topography there and hooked up C44 to the St. Lucie River, it actually backflows. So water actually goes just the way it was hooked up, goes back into the lake. So Brian Mass is protecting his community.
Right.
But when he's saying, I don't want any water, you're giving me 60% more water in the lake. And if it doesn't go east and it can't go south, it's okay for it to come west.
Mm-hmm.
That's unfair. And those are the two contentions on the issue at the low flow and high flow issues, because there's a fallacy and an incorrect fallacy that we deserve more water on the high flow issue because we take water on the low flow issues.
And I think too, because the Caloosahatchee by nature is bigger, wider, and longer than the St. Lucie, that it should take, proportionately, yes, some more water, but not all of it.
We've never disagreed that we don't take 2/3 of the water. We do. But we need them to take their third. I mean, again, when you're looking at the way we're measured, they're measured from S80, which includes their watershed.
Right.
We're measured from S77, which does not include our watershed. We want to be measured at S79. So when you're saying you're going to receive 2,500 on the high flow, if you measured at S77 and it's a wet season, you could double that amount.
Right.
So 0 to the East Coast with their watershed and 5,000 to us.
I think that's, to clarify, S77 is measured in Moorhaven.
Correct.
By the lake.
Correct.
And S79 is the one at Franklin Locks.
Correct.
So what happens is all of that water from our watershed, which is a huge watershed,
Absolutely.
does not get accounted for. So they may release I'm going to use an arbitrary number out of Moorhaven of 3,000. We may be getting 10,000 by the time it runs off, and it's running off. The water that's running off there isn't necessarily clean either. So I think that was one of the big things I heard talk about was changing where they measure, because you can see on some of their modeling, sometimes they measure it here, sometimes they measure it there. And that does seem unfair or inaccurate.
Well, to have everything balanced, S80 includes their watershed on the
Right.
East Coast. So why can't we at least have an even playing field and get measured at S79 to include our watershed? And you're right. Our watershed is much bigger. We're also
Huge.
handling 2/3 of the water.
Right.
So that's the offset.
Right.
How did Brian Mast get what he wanted? And do you feel like Byron Donalds is fighting as hard for our side like you are as Brian Mast is on their side? Are we getting the kind of support from Byron Donalds?
I think what we've done in this process is listen to Colonel Kelly. He continues to say it's only iteration 1. It's only iteration 2. At some point in time, you start disbelieving or not actually thinking we're going to get our way. Byron Donalds has certainly stepped in a big way. He's part of our team. The West Coast is united. But I have the privilege of being in office for 15 years.
Right.
I've been the water person for 15 years.
For sure.
So everybody knows who I am. And we all have connections. I'm also, to Brian Mast's counterpart, I'm the local representative to the South Florida Ecosystem Task Force, which is an Everglades Restoration Task Force. It's a local, state, and federal entity where you have a local official, and I've been that person since Governor Scott initially appointed me. So water's just kind of been the person, but the West Coast, we've never had greater partners.
Okay.
From congressmen to our local delegation, they wrote a very powerful letter to all the mayors, to the county. It's just for the first time we're all united, speaking one voice for one solution.
Is Captains for Clean Water on the right side of this, in your opinion?
Captains for Clean Water has obviously a membership on East and West, but certainly they've come together, and this has been a confusing issue, but I think they've said yes. I think what the issue they have is someone will ask me a question. Should the East Coast get water? It's a really simple yes answer. Okay. That's where you start to get into some issues,
right.
And that's where some people get tripped up over this. I believe the Captains for Clean Water's heart's in the right place. And I think they have to obviously navigate through what they do for their membership.
Gotcha.
Well, and I think that it's not as simple as water should go east, and it's just not as simple as one solution. It's going to take a lot of different changes to make something more fair and more balanced.
Let me digress for a moment, because honestly, the way I'm able to advocate is I have a natural resource department for the county. When I was at the city of Sanibel, I had a natural resource department. So I have scientists to do the science. The Captains is a relatively young organization. So that's an area that you will develop and evolve over. So you rely on science. My argument isn't personal. I like Colonel Kelly and I respect his service. It's science-based, and that's really where my frustration is, because it's all been science-based driven. And when you look at charts for AA through EE, you see the graphs, you see the flows.
Pop up that, if you can pop up
Yeah, I
that.
can. Go ahead,
thing so that people can see it. I do think too, I was listening to
she wants everybody to see this graph here, so she
clean water conversations, and you can find that on the SCCF Facebook page, where they had a representative from SCCF and a representative from Friends of Everglades and East Coast representative from Rivers Coalition, and they were all talking, and it was nice to hear that there was some agreement between both sides on things that could be done to CC to make it better for both, so that it isn't really feeling like this pit against the East and the West. And I think some of the things that they were talking about that were common was doing away with one of those zones so that the water could be dropped lower. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So you start at zone E and you work up to zone D, C, B, and A. So the thought out there is certainly to try to consolidate a zone and try to see a better flowway or an allocation. They're talking about doing that. And that's where most of the people from a science point of view see the disparities between the East and the West. Because when you look at zone E or zone D, you don't start to see an East Coast flow until the middle part of zone C. So there's a lot of flow that takes place in obviously going west and going south, but nothing going east.
How is it that what was the East Coast able to explain to the Army Corps to say, okay, you're not going to get any water? What did they say that we couldn't say, or what's the difference so that they don't get the water over there?
Well, I mean, they have a much shorter run than we do.
Okay.
So obviously, as you start to see releases, they've had more beach closures than we've had in the past. So whenever there's blue-green algae on the lake, there's always a concern not to release water. Okay. And obviously, if it's leaning towards the east side, you don't want to do that. It's just that that has gone away, and we're now in this neutral where we don't send any water east, which is not correct. And they've advocated, Brian Mass has done a great job of bringing the water there to say, here's the toxicity of the water. And he's been very, very effective in what he does. And he's doing what's best for his community.
Sure.
I work with Brian, but we also have to have a balance. And what you have to go is look at 2008 laws to LOSUM and look at each side and are we improving? And listen, the person that I admire the most, who I worked with for the last 3 years, is retired Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds. Jennifer Reynolds was obviously the second in command of Lieutenant to obviously Colonel Kelly. She has now gone on to the Water Management District and presented an alternative to optimize.
Okay.
Well, we'll pop up that graph that
The
shows,
flows.
and then people can see. So there you go. I don't know if you can see it, but the one that she created there is down. I think all the way. I gotta put my glasses on. All the way to the right, and so the yellow, folks, are the flows to the Caloosahatchee, and the green are the flows to the St. Lucie, and the red on the bottom is what's stored south. So I think you can see with CC, you can see with CC how much flow. That's a lot of flow that
It
we're
looks like
getting.
more than any of them.
More
except
than
for
any of
AA.
them. And the one that you were just talking about, the SR 3.5, kind of, it evens
Not
it out.
that much less.
Yeah, so what you're doing is they've looked at this, and again, let's remember that Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds retired. For 3 years was the number 2 person. She knows the lake better than anybody, and she's presented an alternative with the Water Management District to actually have more water go east, less water go west, and more water go south. So everybody benefits from laws 2008. But the fallacy the East Coast is under is they don't receive any water whatsoever. And their counter argument has always been, you take water, so you need the lake. We don't need the lake. We never want any water from the lake.
Right.
Why does it seem like we're losing this fight?
I think, in all honesty, we've taken Colonel Kelly at his word that we're going to balance this.
Okay.
Relax. It's going to get better.
Yes.
And Monday is going to be the same thing. Going to be some, just relax. We're still in the process. We still have to whenever. At some point in time, you get frustrated and you lose faith. And I think that's where I'm at this point.
And Colonel Kelly yesterday held a press conference, and he said CC is a good plan. He said it's about the science, and he said that they're only going to be minor tweaks. Will that be okay?
No. I mean, so science is how we've driven this argument. There's charts that you put up on this show. You clearly see the charts. You obviously clearly see where it's not proportionally allocated in any way, shape, or form. It's not fair. And the science doesn't necessarily really support his argument whatsoever. And I have no problem arguing the science. And if we need to go to whatever extent to argue the science, including in a courtroom, we'll do that, because the Army Corps isn't perfect. And they have to understand, yes, they've taken feedback, but their mind's been set and made up. When I had a meeting with Colonel Kelly in Lee County, he basically said, yes, we'll make some minor tweaks. So 10 days later, it's still the same minor tweaks. And there's not a scientist around that says minor tweaks are going to get it done for the Caloosahatchee.
What tweaks would you like to, not you, but what tweaks would be beneficial? I mean, we've got this plan. They're not there. He made it clear they're not starting over again and going with another plan. So we've got this plan. Yeah. What tweaks, minor or major, would be beneficial for us and something that would make everyone happy?
A game breaker has to be that we measure it as 79. Okay. Because then we could actually start to look at flows properly. Okay. Yep. And say, okay, here's where we are. In Zone D, the East Coast has to receive water. Okay. They could receive up to 1,400 CFS before it's damaging discharges. They have to receive water in Zone D. So we want to obviously have them see that. And then as you go up the ladder, a proportionate share between East and West, understanding we have a bigger footprint and understanding we can. But just compare it to laws, and we want an improvement. I go back to just look at SR 3.5 and adopt SR 3.5, because there is a win for all parties.
So then why didn't they go with that?
They didn't have.
It's the government, and honestly trying to move the Army Corps of Engineers, okay, to try to come up with something new. We've had this 19 months, and that's one of the problems we have in government as a whole. In my opinion, has always been, my mind's made up. This is the way we've always done it. We're doing it.
Do
That
the
isn't
other
best
do the other
solution.
two parties involved? I know there are more parties involved, but the East Coast and the folks down south, which is water supply, do they agree
And
that
Everglades.
that choice is good for everybody, or do they disagree?
They all certainly recognize that there's major deficiencies in CC.
Okay.
Okay, no one would say that. They all recognize that SR35 is certainly another alternative to optimize CC.
Okay.
So no one has disputed that. The issue really comes down to they have to get comfortable with the model, they being water supply, and are they going to receive enough water? Is their concern? But certainly they are aware of and certainly have expressed publicly that the West Coast is getting screwed in this.
Okay.
What about the Army Corps of Engineers when there's a harmful algal bloom, taking that into consideration and using that as a metric for how much and where and when they're going to release water?
Well, I mean, that's certainly one of the considerations on the table, to let the lake fill up a little bit higher and don't release that when there's blue-green algae, to give it an opportunity to dissipate and break up and obviously deal with that. The other thing that we want to take into consideration, and I've worked with all the mayors around the lake, and I don't want to put their health, welfare, safety at risk, but we also have put in almost $2 billion into restoring the lake, restoring the Herbal Hoover dike, so we can hold more water up there. So the 15.5 barrier that we have needs to obviously be lifted so we can hold more water up the lake during these blue-green algae outbreaks. Right now the lake's at 13.87. I check it every single morning. Okay, we have the capacity, since 90% of the improvements are done at the lake right now, to hold more water, and we should.
How high can it go and be okay?
In a temporary situation, you'd be amazed at what 6 inches or even 9 inches on the lake can do for us. It could almost take us to having almost no releases.
Okay.
And that's what we want to also take into consideration. I don't want to put anyone's welfare or safety at risk. But I also want to recognize that the taxpayers throughout the United States put $1.8 billion into restoring that situation. So we never have a Katrina. And I never want to be in office and have a Katrina.
Well, I'm going to ask some dumb questions because that's my role here, is to ask the dumb questions. But they're putting this plan together, this LOSUM plan that they say has to be for the next 10 years. Why does it have to be for 10 years? Why can't it be adjusted along the way if you see something happening 2-3 years from now and it's having a drastic impact on one of the parties? Why does it have to be for a decade?
One of the processes that we go through in government is to try to be transparent. So we have to have a public arena. We have to have a lot of input. We go through this. LOSUM's been going on for 19 months. But the funny thing I always hear when it's a decade, laws was only supposed to be for 3 or 4 years. We're now on 13.
Yeah.
So I could bet you one thing, that the decade is probably short.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be longer than a decade.
But I think that you bring up a good point, Dare. You can ring the bell. Is that the plan should have some flexibility in it, so that when there's an exceptional weather event, you don't have to stick with the plan hard and fast. If it's going to be harmful to whomever,
is that what they do though? They're going to stick with it no matter what.
So 2 words I've always used in government, and I find it really refreshing in local government, is flexibility and be able to pivot. And you should be able to adapt to the particular situation. I didn't plan on vaccinating Lee County, but we were given that choice.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it right the first time out of the gate. But by the time we had it in mass vaccinations, we got things done. You need to have the same flexibility here. And, I just don't see the U.S. government, unfortunately, the bureaucracy it is, to have the flexibility that local government has.
Is DeSantis involved enough in what we're going through on this side? He's always cutting red tape for this red tide, and seems like there's some money there. But does he involved at all at the level, like, we're getting screwed over here? Do you pick up the phone on the bat phone and call him up and say, hey, Kelly's screwing us over here?
I mean, don't for a moment think that the governor hasn't been engaged. Unfortunately, okay, this is a federal issue.
Okay.
And the federal government gets to say on high flows. They're responsible for managing the lake. Let's understand, their first mission was safety. Okay, so DeSantis can scream at the mountaintops. So can the South Florida Water Management District. But it's still a federal decision, not a state decision. So that's where you have some, uneasiness. But I am very pleased with the governor. I mean, I am his member of his task force. He appointed me after Scott appointed me. So he's very much engaged, but there's only so much he's going to do as the governor the state of Florida, where the Army Corps has to look at this as their mission. And that's what this sometimes seems like. It's a mission or objective. I mean, it just doesn't, it seems concrete. It seems the ability not to be flexible and be able to move. And that's what I find to be so difficult to deal with.
And they also work with South Florida Water Management District because they are responsible during the low when it gets down to the water shortage line. Is that correct? So
Correct.
then they manage from there what goes south.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the most complex situations when you have one partner taking care of it at a particular level and then another partner taking it at a higher level. So that's where you have your disparity. And quite frankly, I'd like to see one entity manage the lake for the entire 12 months, because what we've done, and I give the Water Management District all the credit in the world, is we've managed the lake. So we've lowered the lake and enabled it to get lower. So like anything else, you have the ability to fill it up higher during this wet season. And if you have that capacity, then less has to go out, especially since we restored the dike.
You said last week during the county board meeting that since 2018, the lake has been managed well. What did you mean by that? You didn't get into specifics, but what did you mean by that?
So you had a guest on this show, John Campbell.
Yep.
He clearly said in 2018, I should have listened to Mayor Ruane at the time and released water during the low flow issues. Colonel Kelly came into the situation where we had red tide of significant proportions and Cape Coral had blue-green algae. Managing the lake is really important because what we all talked about before is not releasing when there's high toxins in the water, when you have blue-green algae. But the lake gets to a certain point and you're managing it. 3 years ago, we get that at 15 and a half, you have to flush it. And that's where the biggest mistake, John Campbell on your show said they made a mistake. So Colonel Kelly walked into this situation understanding the travesty he created. Because call it whatever you want, when you're a CEO, you're in charge, and there's a travesty of the nature we had here. I mean, on the beach and in Sanibel, I had waiters and waitresses making $1,500 a week now on food lines.
Yeah.
I mean, we gave more food out to more people. You go into a restaurant, nobody would be there.
Yeah.
I mean, we are unfortunately an economy driven by tourists.
Yeah.
And snowbirds and second homes, and that's what we are. So I think he's managed the lake in an appropriate way, because every day, if you manage the lake in an appropriate way, 365 days a year, you're going to succeed. And he's done a great job, and I give him all the credit in the world. But why change this operational flexibility? Because laws has some really, really flaws in it, but he's used two things really well. One is shared adversity. And that's what we're all asking for in this.
Not just be the only ones that get it.
We all feel the pain and operational flexibility. So he uses his decision. That's why he's on every week. After the science call on Monday, he makes his announcement on Friday on what takes place at the lake and what releases are going to take place. So he manages that in an effective way. So we have the capacity when we go through wet season to hold more water.
So for folks,
let me just ask, when talking about capacity, you know, there are some who've talked about why not move more water south, that there's those water conservation areas, there's the STAs that will treat the water, because that's the other thing too. When you flush the lake and the water is yucky, it's gonna cause problems down here. If you flush it down through the south and it flows through those storm treatment areas, and then it can be stored as cleaner water. What about, you do hear people talking about why not move water south? What are some of the impediments to moving more water south so it doesn't have to go east or west?
Well, first and foremost, we don't have enough STAs. Second, where do we store the water?
STAs meaning what?
Stormwater treatments.
Okay.
So a long time ago, there was a lot of different people that came together and sued the federal government and indicated you can't send your polluted water to us south. Everglades, you can't do that. And they won.
Okay.
So now the law says that you have to send water that's actually 10 parts per billion. So the nitrogen and phosphate has to be removed to the point where it's very, very clean. That process in itself is one that's time consuming and one that you just can't just flush and say, here's 10,000, here's 20,000 CFS. And you have many different ways to deal with it. One, obviously, is stormwater treatments. Two, you have to store it someplace. And you might be putting water in canals, the WCAs. And you might have capacity issues there because they fill up during the wet season like anyone else. And then you also have the Tamiami Bridge, which we're raising, and that's been a project that's going on that should be completed. But there's a lot of impediments that still, we need more STAs, we need more land. And that's why everyone wants the EAA. I mean, we need to have storage,
EAA,
more
meaning?
storage, Everglades agriculture area.
Okay.
Okay. And that's where we're going to have a reservoir south that everybody's been fighting for. Why LOSIM has so much pressure is the federal government hasn't funded the projects.
Okay.
There are 68 projects we've all agreed upon called the integrated delivery schedule. So local, state, and federal have said so. And there's a partnership agreement between the Fed and the state where they're going to pay 50-50 core share. The federal government at the moment is $3 billion behind in projects.
Oh.
And that's why the projects get slowed down. C43 that we all talk about, we broke ground in 2000.
Wow.
It's going to be done in 2024.
Right.
Wow.
That's the problem you have, like any construction project. Tell your contractors you have no money. See how long they work.
So for folks that don't know, Colonel Kelly is going to hold I don't know what you call it, some kind of meeting on Monday at 11 o'clock where it sounds like he's going to announce what his final decision is. I was under the impression when CC was announced, there was a whole lot more time that was going to be put into optimizing CC, but it seems like Monday is going to be a big announcement, and then you guys will decide whether there's going to be a lawsuit at some point, and they're going to, I guess you're going to get on Monday how much he's going to optimize it, right? He didn't say anything yesterday much in his press conference. He kept saying, wait to Monday, wait to Monday. Is that the way you see it? Monday, you'll get an understanding on Monday at 11, whether we're going to get screwed or not.
So, August 9th, he's making his announcement. 2 weeks ago, we met with him. He said it between the 5th and the 10th.
Okay.
So it's August 9th when he's going to make his announcement. And he basically said at our meeting and said yesterday, there'll be some minor tweaks to CC. We need significant tweaks. And he knows that. Everybody's been united. We've all talked about the same 5 or 6 talking points on what adjustments you need to make. And I don't know why, for the life of me, he just won't listen to retired Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
She worked this for 3 years. Nobody knows this lake better than her. And you actually have a win-win-win. But I can assure the people in Lee County that if there are some minor tweaks, we will explore every single option we have. And quite frankly, I can't tell you the number of people that said, thank you for standing up.
For sure.
And do something about this, even if you have to sue the federal government.
So what?
So that would be the most extreme. Is that the only option, or are there other options as you see them, or is that really kind of it?
At some point in time, we're not going to have any more bullets left in the gun. Okay. We've gone through this process. We've been patient. We've been respectful. We've been told to wait. We've been told it's going to get better. Just like Friday's announcement, we're going to maximize optimization CC. His definition of maximum and West Coast would probably be very greatly. And we'll see exactly what type of adjustments he makes.
So and he's also going to be in town next week too. He's going to be at the Pink Shell for a chamber event that's being held by the Sanibel Chamber, and Byron Donalds is hosting some kind of roundtable in Cape Coral. So he will be around. I don't know if that means anything. Is there anything? I mean, you've heard from thousands of people on this. He said that he got 4,000 to 5,000 yesterday.
Emails,
4,000 to 5,000 emails. It sounds like
he said 5 to 6, but
5 to 6. It sounds like that's on the low end of what he probably got.
Well, I know, we all have followings when it comes to water. SCCF does, Captains for Clean Water, the chambers, the realtors, and I have a huge following. I know what we've done from our camp and generated how many letters. I'm going to say we're in the tens of thousands of letters, probably 30 or 40. But again, he obviously got those letters and he's going to make his decision. And in my opinion, I thought his decision was made up 2 weeks ago. And I'm not trying to threaten anybody. I'm just trying to protect our community.
For sure. And Colonel Kelly's retiring, by the way. He's going to make this decision, and then he's going to be able to go to his summer house in Belize or wherever he has a summer house. And then the new guy comes in, right? And is it October or something? So so the way it looks to me, and I could be just reading it wrong. Like he makes the decision, the new guy comes in, and then he gets to say, well, I didn't make this decision. It's not on me. And so it doesn't seem like
the process is flawed. I mean, honestly, to have a colonel in that role for only 3 years should change. Again, you wouldn't change any major entity every 3 years because the calendar turns. You would change it based on the adaptability, and you're able to be flexible. So I respect what Colonel Kelly's done from his service.
Sure.
I respect that he's managed the lake, but he's going to retire, and he made his retirement announcement a long time ago. So this happens to coincide with his 3-year term.
Right.
It's a
I see.
3-year term. It's
Gotcha.
not, he didn't decide,
Gotcha.
listen, you know what?
Right.
I'm going to make this decision on low stuff, but I'm
I
out
hear
of
you.
here.
See, I was wrong
you
about
don't
that.
know. And the other thing is, you don't necessarily want the flip side either, where
New guy
it's
comes
not
in.
decided
Yeah.
and a new guy
Yeah.
comes in, and now you're having to string it out even longer. And I think, every time I heard Colonel Kelly say a lot of times, I've heard the concerns.
yeah.
I've
Loud and
heard the
clear.
concerns.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. So
He didn't say we're going to follow through on their concerns that we heard loud and clear. He said he heard them.
Listen, Colonel Kelly has a very tough decision, but he's also someone that's been in the Army for a long time, used to following orders, used to following protocols. I don't know that he has the same constituent coming up to him at the grocery store or at a restaurant or saying, you know what, my business is off. My heart went out to the people in 2018 to see the devastation. And this isn't the first, second, third, or fourth time it's wrecked our economy.
Yeah.
Enough's enough.
Are we one big storm and rainy season away from the same thing happening?
We are certainly very close to the same thing happening. That's our biggest concern. And having come off the pandemic, I'm not necessarily certain the hospitality industry, which is I'm most concerned about, that makes the living, has the reserves built back up, because they lost a season and a lot of people really just limped through. So to actually have another devastation after this pandemic is going to make it almost impossible for them to survive.
what do you think on the C43 Reservoir, as that comes online, how much will that help?
The C43 is going to help us on the low flow issues. It'll take care of some
On the
of
low flow issues.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's only 170,000 cubic feet, so you're not going to hold a lot of water in there. So if you have
People
a major
have been talking
event,
about how big it is, though.
it is tremendous. But again, when you're talking about billions and billions of gallons of water, okay, 170,000 acre feet is going to fill up very quickly. And honestly, if we can have C43 to help us on our low flow issues, and if we could hold more water up at the lake just during the wet period, I'm not saying perpetually, just during the wet season, because we do that, we manage it in an appropriate way. You can certainly raise the water levels there, hold more water, less releases east and west, and we don't have this anxiety that we go through. This is a stressful situation for every business owner that's watching this right now.
Is this the number one issue that you deal with at the county level right now? Is it the top issue?
I mean, this has been my number one issue I ran on. So it's passionate to me.
When you get into the political season, you ask people at every level what their number one issue is around here, and they always say, I'm running on clean water. You were really the main person running on clean water. Everybody, who's going to run on dirty water? I want somebody to say I'm running on dirty water, because then you could believe them. But from the early days over on Sanibel, it's always been. But you understand you get into the whole science of it, and sometimes I think, especially with me, some of it goes like, okay, it's getting crazy. The science is getting crazy, and the S79s and the different things, and people just want to know, what the hell can I do to help?
Well,
right. Without having to study, you spend hours and hours in the rabbit hole trying to figure out everything that's going on.
Well, I think, because I'm new,
but everybody would have to
come
do
into
that.
this, but they're managing the water, not necessarily the health of the water.
So, I mean, listen.
And so stuff needs to be, because that's what makes it bad for us. It's not just the amount of water, it's that the water is a lot and it's dirty. And so they're not really, that's not their job, the Army Corps of Engineers, to manage water quality, to put a fine point on that. So it's what can we do to manage water quality? What can be done to make the water going into the lake a little better? And what can we do when it comes out, which would be the storm water treatment areas?
Well, great questions. And honestly, what we need to do, great questions. What we really need to do is water quality and water quantity. I always tell people about it. Quantity is about storage.
Okay.
Quality is about making sure we don't over fertilize.
Right.
We deal with stormwater runoff. Okay. We remove nitrogen and phosphate like we do on Sanibel, and have reclaimed water where we reuse water when we remove the nitrogen and phosphate from it. Okay. So you have that process you go through. You have septic tanks that are necessary. Okay. And they work as long as they work. but we need to do a better job inspecting the ones that don't work. And we need to obviously come up with a solution when they don't work in that regard. To your question, okay, how do people understand this? I had 15 years in office, so it's not something I woke up, and science was not my concentration in school, it was business. But I had someone like James Evans, okay, that rode by my side for 14 years.
Yeah, he's
so
good.
when we got into the science, we did. I now go to the Lee County. I have a natural resource department. Roland Olanini works very closely with James. I have 1 and 2 people and a consultant that advise me.
Okay.
The briefings I have to go through, and I have 15 years of briefings I've gone through. It's not an easy subject. I argue the economy.
Right.
Okay. I argue what I know, and I argue firsthand what is affected here in Lee County. And it's the economy. I can't get into the science because it's an area I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
But I know about running businesses. I've done it my entire
And
life.
water really affects the economy. Let me just ask this one question,
Here,
because
let's let the audience
all right,
participate
all
too.
right, I
You're-
will, but
you're-
let me
you're
just, because he
hogging all the
dovetails right
questions.
into it. You were talking about all of the, what is Lee County, what are some of the programs that are in place Lee County's doing for clean water?
So here's
Glad I asked.
absolutely. So, I mean, we have been involved in a very aggressive program called Don't Feed the Monster fertilizer program. Okay, we advertise it. We work with the city of Sanibel. We're trying to look at this. I'd like to see the times extended for fertilizer. Have it start in June, where there's a blackout period, and go to November because that coincides with hurricane season. Right now, we obviously have it starting in July, going through the end of September. So we are very aggressive in making sure you don't fertilize during that period of time, because I live on a canal, and if I fertilize, it's just the rain's gonna wash into the canal. So we do that. Secondarily, Lee County has done so much acquisitions with land called 2020. Okay. The 2020 program is a significant piece to having less development. Less development has less problems and strain on the water system. So they do that. Stormwater runoff. We're very active in that process. We're trying to make sure we identify where we can and how we do. The other issue,
Filter marshes.
filter marshes, we go through that process to make sure we're having as clean water as possible. And septic, we're, looking at areas that we can improve upon, make sure we do it. But, here's the fallacy in this whole discussion when you talk about water quality. So we all follow something called the TMDL, total daily maximum load. Okay. It talks about nitrogen and phosphate. Well, what's going to happen to the total maximum daily load, and we're doing these local projects, is it's going to be totally just offset and worse when you have all this water coming that the East Coast should be taking, we're taking. So the water quality projects we're working on are significant, and most people don't realize the millions upon millions of dollars that the county has spent. GS10 is an area that we did that we thought could be a solution and part of the solution for C43. It was a $10 million acquisition. The county paid for that. So when I look at the 2020 program, when I look at fertilizer, stormwater runoff, and when it comes to septic tank conversions, those are the things we're working on water quality. So I don't go to Washington and say, please fund these projects.
Yeah.
Here's the things we're doing. We walk the walk and talk the talk. And I did that on Sanibel as well.
I don't think like when you watch a county board meeting, you won't know all that stuff is going on because of it's really behind the scenes kind of stuff. You don't really hear about it. At least when I watch the meetings, I don't hear about all that stuff that you just mentioned, because the meetings would take forever. I understand that, but the staff is taking care of that, and
absolutely,
maybe in workshops they're coming up.
Part of our consent agenda is constantly acquiring different pieces of land, doing the things we need to. But you're 100% correct. And when we talk about many things in workshops, the problem you have is the communication issue. Is we have a lot of workshops. Generally, every other Tuesday we meet as a body, and then we have a workshop in the afternoon. So there's always issues that we're talking about. In addition to that, we had a strategic planning event in February where we get together with staff, major key players and staff, and the county commissioners. We talked about what our objectives were, and water quality was at the top of the list. Yeah. So it's always been a top priority.
So let's say George's question is, ask him about the soil amendments to agriculture significantly impact water quality north of Lake Okeechobee.
Sure they do.
Okay.
Sure they do. So what we need to do is continue to address the water coming into the lake. So anything we can do north of the lake, we want to obviously capitalize on. Again, you have the same issues of runoff. You have the same issues of fertilization. You have the same issues of any of that going into Lake O. So whatever we can do to address anything north is going to obviously make the water cleaner. That's going to go into Lake O.
Well, and address what goes into the basin too. I mean, it's, you got to fix all the soil. It's those best management practices and basin management action plans all need to, do you think people in general are being held accountable to make sure they're using those best practices when it comes to fertilizer?
How do you do
management?
that? I mean, how do you?
I mean, so let's understand that we're stewards of the environment. We have a responsibility. There's only so much government can do to enforce these rules and regulations. If you're just someone that has moved here and want to have a quality of life, think about the fertilizer you put on your lawn. Think about that, and make sure you're contributing to the solution, not the problem. And everybody has a role in this. And there's no silver bullet to cleaning this up. There's no silver bullet whatsoever. Everybody has to take an active role to understand, how do I make the environment better? And my correlation wasn't about the science. It was the impact to the community from a financial point of view. That resonated with me. Because science just isn't something that resonates with me.
What are, if you're a betting man, what would you say about whether or not the county is going to file a lawsuit against the federal government?
I'm not going to bet because I got 4 other gentlemen I work with, but we were all unanimously, we approved the fact that we will use every tool in our toolbox, including whatever legal options are available to us. Our work with staff will do whatever we need to do. When it comes to clean water, I believe in what we believe in, and I am very passionate about it. But I also have the benefit of being in office for 15 years. So the relationships, the things that you see, and I have more knowledge because of that. But yeah, this is an issue that I made a promise to the citizens of Lee County I was going to work on.
Yeah.
And my promise is worth something. I was raised by a dad, obviously a retired Marine. And it's just, you give someone your word, you follow through on your word.
So the county attorney, who's no nonsense when you watch him at the meetings, mentioned something about the Endangered Species Act, is a lawsuit just going to try and muddy up the waters if it happens, just to delay it and try and work on getting LOSUM better? Or do you think, this is a dumb question, of course, but do you think that there's something serious there that you could actually hang your hat on?
There's always options, and we'll obviously follow the science. I do believe we have many alternatives available to us. And I do believe that most people, when they feel there's an injustice, you end up taking it to the court system. And what has happened during that process is there's a compromise. And there's obviously something going along with that. I also have the habit, unfortunately, and the mark and the stereotype, we sued the Water Management District 3 years ago. I walked into Lee County with 5 other mayors behind me, and we sued, and yet we lost that lawsuit. But the outcome of that, the Water Management District changed the MFL issue, which is minimum flow issue, and we got more water, and that's what the objective was. So did I lose the lawsuit? Technically, yes. Did we benefit from it? Yes.
Got it. Why are all the manatees dying?
Well,
that's crazy, isn't it? I mean, does it have anything to do with anything we're talking about, or it's just one of those freak things where there's not enough food?
Well, how did the food
I know. Is it all connected somehow? It's crazy.
I mean, there's a lot of pieces that are connected to, there's no greater joy. I live on the river over in Cape Coral, and there's no greater joy to watch the manatees, obviously right there. Our dog goes crazy when he sees them.
Yeah.
It's really a show, and it's really a delight to just understand that you live on the water and you get to experience that. And that's something that would be heartbreaking to me if I couldn't experience.
Yeah.
Well, I was out swimming a couple of weeks ago in the Gulf and saw something out of the corner of my eye and stopped swimming quickly. And there was a few manatees within 5 feet of me. I mean, it did give me a start at first, but it's so exciting to see them. And it is such a shame, what's been going on with them lately. And that's also, figured into getting the water cleaned up, getting the environment taken care of.
So, Kevin, last question on the water, and then I have a couple other just quick questions.
Sure.
But what can people do, or should people do, or other than what they're doing? And there's some form letters that are out there that people send in. But what do you want them to do? Is there anything? Just pay attention, or because you've got
This
control of it.
This is our community. Be engaged. understand that when we make a decision, we're doing it for your best option, and your voice is certainly being heard. I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to run on clean water. I woke up to 3 feet of red drift algae on the beaches of Sanibel in 2007. And the citizens said, we don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
So the citizens, I want them to be engaged, be as vocal as you can be, and be supportive of the fact that if we have to, with no other tools left in the toolbox, if we have to file a suit, be supportive of what we're doing is fighting for them. I don't win suing anybody. And as a business person, I hate suing people. Didn't like doing it when I worked for a Fortune 50 company. Don't like doing it when I run my companies today. But there's a point in time where you say enough is enough. And we're at that point.
One of the things, you have any other questions?
Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to ask about is the homeless situation in Lee County. I don't think people realize, maybe they do, what Lee County really does to help the homeless. You know, you watch the county board meetings. When I do, there's a couple, 3 people that consistently come up there and make it sound like the county's not doing anything. But there really are a lot of county programs. But back up a little bit, because you told a story once about being in a situation where you had to lift yourself up. Can you tell that story and then tell us about what Lee County is doing to help the homeless?
So the quick version, when I was 18, I had full scholarships to many colleges, and my dad had a alcohol problem. So he actually fell off the wagon and mom kicked him out. So we went from not really understanding the finances of the house, probably an upper middle class family, to obviously not having any income come in the house whatsoever. We were in much worse financial shape than we realized. And that's honestly the pressure he felt drinking. So we went from going on welfare, going on food stamps, sitting in the dark for 10 days. It's the worst feeling you ever have. I believe my drive today at 18, now at 62, is the same drive. There's no worse feeling than watching somebody go to bed hungry. There's no worse feeling than sitting there and feeling like you might be homeless. I was fortunate to sit down with the banker at the time, come up with a plan, and it worked. My dad actually got into AA 4 years later. My mom and dad lived to the day he died in that house. So it's a great story. So my heart goes out to people. I don't want anyone to go to bed hungry. I went to bed hungry. I know what it's like. So when people talk about homelessness, I want to make sure we help them in any way possible. The county has the Bob James Triage Center. You know, it is not full. You have to follow rules, but you have the opportunity to go there. We're going to help you get cleaned up. We're going to help you go through whatever treatment program you need to. We're going to give you a bed, 3 hot meals. You have the ability to, we're going to help you with trying to get a job. We have many programs like that. And through, if there's any really silver lining in the pandemic, is the amount of money we receive from the federal government. We also came up with a short-term solution of putting homeless people in hotels. But they don't want to follow our rules. They don't want to follow the guidelines they have to. So I have empathy and sympathy for them. And food is something that I've always thought that we need to do. So the Salvation Army, we partners with, and many of those entities where if you don't want to live in a shelter, but you want to get a hot meal, you can go to the Salvation Army. There's one right in Fort Myers near the county. You can go there and shower, shave, and get 3 hot meals every single day.
One of the things the county succeeded at was getting the people out of the medians, which was, I mean, in Lee County and Daniels, where we live out in Gateway, they were everywhere begging. I don't mean to use that word, but they were begging for money. And you somehow, you were able to either move them to the side where, because it was dangerous. It was clearly, she saw somebody fall into the road. And so, how did you guys succeed at that? It would
give the sheriff all the credit in the world. Okay? He sat down, he gave us the stats. He talked about how many people on the mediums got hit by cars. Okay, and he obviously had to police this and enforce this. Sheriff Carl Marcino works with the county commissioners hand in hand. We work collectively together, and all we're saying is just don't be in the middle of a medium.
Right.
You want to go someplace else, and you want to go beg for money. And listen, what I'd rather do when I ask those people, and I've gone up to people and said, okay, I won't give you money, but I'll go buy you a meal. I'll give you a pizza. What would you like to eat? No, I just want money. I won't give anyone money. I'll give anyone a meal any day of the week. And I want people to understand, contact the county through this whole process. We've been paying people's rent, utilities through the CARES program. We have shelters that you could actually go to. We have temporary facilities and hotels that we actually use our dollars for. And we have many partners like the Salvation Army where we're giving meals, Bob James Triage Center, where we're trying to help you get back into a situation, whether you have some psychological problems, whether you have some other issues that we deal with. There's many, many issues here. We'll help the people that want to be helped. But what I learned a long time ago, it took my dad 4 years to hit bottom. You're going to want to help yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the challenge that I think that you live in a time now where you see people sleeping on a bench or on the beach. You can't kick them and say, hey, come on, we're taking you to, we're going to help you. You can't, because
You can't force
you can't do that, which is, you don't know if that person's the one that's going to go to the library and kill the librarian. I mean, how do you figure out there's a fine line between helping somebody and leaving them alone, I guess.
We only can advocate and encourage people to go to the programs we have. Okay. And we truly, if people saying you're hungry, go get a meal. I don't ask for anything of you. You walk into Salvation Army, you can get a meal. I don't ask your name, your date of birth, nothing.
Right.
Go get something to eat. Okay. And go take a shower.
Yeah.
Go shave. We have facilities. And what breaks my heart is they're not at a capacity. If you came to me as a county commissioner and said, listen, Commissioner, we're at capacity. Can you build more? Or can you partner with Salvation Army to do more? I guarantee you the commissioners would hear that very loudly. But we need to utilize the facilities we have available. And I want to see those people. So the same 3 people that you talk about, they come to us and she doesn't want to go into a particular facility or he doesn't want to go into a facility. And I respect the fact they want their independence, but you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, right. So the other question I want to ask about is Lee County keeping up with the growth? Everybody seems like they want to move to Florida, and it's getting crazy with all the people that want to get out of the prison states and move down to sunny Florida.
And I think what you're seeing too is, to a certain extent, that's driving up the rents that are putting people in risk of being homeless because they can't afford. I know of two families that had to leave the area because they just couldn't afford that. The houses were being sold that they were renting because I get it. The owner owns the house and can get a boatload of money. Okay. But it is tricky to find affordable housing.
I mean, the county certainly is. We put our first or second program together for affordable housing. Every city needs to step up. When I was in Sanibel, we had affordable housing there. Okay. Every city needs to participate. The county needs to participate because what we're having is we also need to have that tool in the toolbox to have affordable housing, to get that teacher, to get that nurse, to get that. My son moved down from Orlando. He's now in Cape Coral. I understand exactly what people are going through because he's looking for a rental.
Oh.
He's looking for, potential, obviously first starter home. And it's challenging from a price point of view. So at the moment, he lives with mom and dad. And at 26, he wasn't thrilled to come back with mom and dad.
Right.
And have his independence. But he's in the process with his girlfriend of starting a life here in Lee County. He's here. He wants to be part of that process. It just needs a lot of determination. But I can also tell you that he's probably 2 months away from moving in. So he's been very active. He's went to a few places and he had the ability, because there's 2 incomes that would be paying the rent, to pay that. I feel bad for the single income family. That's what we need to continue to work on. That problem didn't happen overnight. We're not going to solve it overnight.
And finally, the budget and the taxes. You were strong. You came right out of the gate and said there's going to be no tax increase. And you were heard loud and clear, weren't you?
I was. You know what? I'm very fortunate. My first year in office, we went to rollback rate, so there will be no tax increase whatsoever. We're trying to find every opportunity to cut taxes, like I said I did and said I would. And we have a great county commission. So happy to tell the citizens of Lee County, no tax cut, no tax raise whatsoever, potentially a tax cut that's right now. We set the millage rate at the rollback rate. So that's 7% appreciation.
Wow.
Where we went through. We actually went back 7%.
Wow.
And that's where we started off. That's our first hearing. So we set the bar here. And in budgets, you can only go lower. You can't go higher. So yes, I made 2 promises when I ran for office. I'd work on clean water and I'd cut your taxes. And it's really...
Time to retire. Time to retire, man.
Your 60 days is up.
Yeah, right. 60 days.
You know what? I'm blessed to have a wife that's really supportive through the process. And honestly, the neat thing about doing this, you walk around and people, the best paycheck I ever get is someone coming up to you and sincerely looking you in the eyes. I met you guys. Okay. Yeah. So many people, you know what, have faith in local government. They can't tell you. And those words of appreciation are what you do the job for. There's always going to be that 30%, no matter what you do. I could stand on my head and spit $100 bills. it wouldn't be enough.
Right.
But there's a lot of gratification in this job and what I do. I'll continue to do this. I have 3 more years. I'll work just as hard the next 3 years. And hopefully we can make some significant improvements on water. And for nothing else, I can tell people that I'm going to be in there for the 15 rounds. We're going to punch every day. We're going to continue to do this. And this is about our community, our way of life, our families, and our economy. And they're all intertwined with one another.
And we're really pissed off that you didn't bring your wife today, because you back in
we
the
haven't
day,
seen
you used
her
to
in a
bring your
while.
wife all the
Yeah,
time. And
yeah.
so that's
My wife, our family are gym rats. It's what we do.
Yeah.
She goes to a place called Dream Fit. I'm not trying to promote them,
Never heard of that one.
but it's an hour class. It's very much like Platinum. It's the newest thing. So
Got it.
she goes there. We went to a fundraiser where she bought, obviously silent auction. So she got a gift certificate for 90 days.
Nice.
She's obsessed. My daughter, my son, my wife, and I. It's really easy when we're all in the same program.
I hear you.
Okay, we all eat the same food. We all talk about the gym. We talk about whatever, because the genes I inherited, part of mom and dad, they were on blood pressure pills in their 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dad died of his 5th heart attack at 71.
Yeah.
I'm 62 years of age.
Yeah.
I haven't had a heart attack. I just went on a blood pressure pill. So the gym is obviously my outlet, not only for the sanity point of view,
Yeah.
But
but
the
it
health.
also allows you to manage your calories.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I like to eat.
Yeah.
I'm a big guy.
Are you able to
Well-
work out as much as you were when, you were, I'm not saying being the mayor of Sanibel is any less important than being the county board chairman, but you would think
Or
there'd be a
less
few more
time-consuming.
assignments.
I have a lot more. I find that the afternoons and the evenings are really where I'm going. I love going to the gym in the morning.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I go to bed a lot later than I should. And as I've gotten older, I need at least 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I used to get by on 3 or 4.
Ugh.
You know what? And I've always been really blessed not to have to need more sleep. But as I've gotten older, I actually sleep more.
Yeah.
Well, I
Maria
just-
says you're a rock star, by the way. So
And
get
I
a lot
want
of
to.
kudos out there from the people.
I want to encourage everybody to dovetail off what you said about the exercise in these certain times that we're in now, to get outdoors.
Yeah.
And get out and enjoy some of that conservation 2020 land. I'm out many times exploring new preserves around the county with my high waiter boots on right now because it's wet out there. But that land is out there for everybody to enjoy, and it's peaceful out there. Most times you'll be alone. There's some amazing parks and preserves around Lee County, so go out and
This
enjoy
message
them.
was sponsored by
Probably one of the best parks we have is the Larry Kiker Preserve. And we're putting significant money in there for recreation, so you do use that. Listen, we live in a free state. We don't have to walk around outside with masks on. Go out and use this opportunity.
Where is that park so people know? Larry Kiker Park.
Larry Kiker. It's in the county. I don't know exactly where it's located.
You know where it is?
I have not yet been there.
Okay.
It is one of the biggest facilities we have. And unfortunately, when you talk about the education curve I'm going through,
It's a lot
I'm
to
drinking
learn.
from a fire hose at the moment, unfortunately, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Since we have the constitutional offices, so that's every branch of government. When you think of state attorney, police, sheriff, supervisor, election, you go through the offices. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to do here in the county, so please do it.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sitting in for the whole hour, and good luck with the water stuff. Anything we can do to help get the word out, we're here,
I
and we appreciate
the
it.
opportunity to talk to people. You guys obviously met me on this crusade.
Oh, it's been
not
a long
over.
time.
It is, and you know what? I'm grateful to people like yourselves that believe in me, gave me an opportunity to try to make a difference. All I'll tell people is keep on fighting.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you.
Kevin
Very
Ruane,
much.
the county board chairman. We appreciate you coming on, and
Thank you very much.
enjoy your workout
Yeah.
today. And thanks for everything. And we will keep everybody up to date on what's going on, dear. I will take care
all
of.
right. Well, I will just say that the Larry Kiker Preserve is located on Wellfield Road down in Estero, Florida. And you can find all of this information on the Lee County leegov.com website.
All right. Well, you take care of what you have to take care of, and I will let everybody know before we get to our COVID discussion. And there was a little sidebar conversation going on here that with the vaccine debate going on here. I'm not going to debate the vaccine. I just want to tell everybody how it was having COVID, but I do want to tell everybody, of course, about our friends at Beach Pottery. Beach Pottery. We love Alana at Beach Pottery at 17980 San Carlos Boulevard. where you can get pots, and more pots. You know, it would be great if they sold the don'titchit.com stuff at Beach Pottery. We get all our sponsors together, and maybe they should sell the Don't Itch It stuff on the Tiki tours. It's just like one Beach Talk Radio sponsorship. We can meld all the ads together, and but I don't know if they would be able to fit thousands and thousands of pots from Vietnam on the Tiki boat. But if you need a pot, if you need something to put your pot in, with small pots, big pots, all kinds of pots. But remember that the pots are from Vietnam, so they're not importing the virus from China in the pots, because they're, the Vietnamese, they make some cool pots. I don't know if you've ever been to Vietnam like I have back in the day when I was in the war. They were making pots, and I was like, why the hell are you people making pots? There's a war going on here. Well, we got to send them to Fort Myers Beach because they need lots of pots there. They have 8,000 pots from all over. Oh, in Mexico too, of course. The cartels are making pots down in Mexico. So get your pots if you need them from Beach Pottery. Or you can call that and say, what the hell is that idiot talking about with all these pots? 437-4211, 437-4211 for Beach Pottery. And again, don'titchit.com. I was thinking, wife, that if they sold the don'titchit.com at the Beach Pottery, then we could kind of mold everything together. I mean, it's a great location to have it. And you were telling the story about how you were out with the wrestling alligators or fighting bears or snakes or something, and the bug, you got some kind of no-see-ums on you, and you sprayed the Don't Itch It.
But
you can order it online
at
don'titchit.com or islandoilsllc.com. And tell them that, Kim sent you because she was out wrestling alligators and crocodiles, and she sprayed it on her, and it repelled a crocodile. It's like, there's no crocodiles on me. Get off me, crocodile.
Okay,
or it was a river rat or something.
Really, I think you mean alligator, but there aren't alligators in those areas where
the Larry Kuiker Preserve doesn't have alligators?
I do not believe that is one of their attractions.
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, no, I wasn't in Vietnam, Maria. I shouldn't say that. I'm not trying to be one of those fake warriors. I wasn't in the war. It was.
I step away for.
I know. I was just Josh. I think people know I'm not a fighter. I'm more of a lover, and so I wasn't really in Vietnam. But it made sense to say something like that to make the joke.
No, it didn't.
So you can get the Don't Itch It spray or the roll on. They have all kinds of stuff. Roll on. What?
I think when you think you're funny, you should stop right there because it's probably not funny.
Right. Don'titchit.com and islandoilsllc.com. But if I ever think I'm funny, you're going to make sure everybody knows that I'm not. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
That's why it works so well like this. And
if only I could be your filter before it actually comes out and just put up a big
like a funnel,
sign.
like a funnel, like the big goofy stuff, the Gucci stuff will stop before it comes out the bottom and flows on everybody. So last week we had to cancel the show because I tested the big P, the big positive for the COVID. I went through I was feeling a little under the weather, and I'm not gonna argue whether I had the vaccine or didn't have the vaccine, because I don't even think that that matters anymore. And I've never said, or we've never really got into the vaccine thing. It's an argument not worth having. Because people are going to feel the way they feel about it.
And they need to make their own decision based on the information that's available to them that they can process and make an informed decision.
Right. And so I just, start feeling under the weather, and then you yelling at me, go to the doctor, go get tested. So I went to the CVS drive-thru, and I'll tell you what, they've got it down to a science now where it's like, you have the bank teller send you out the swab, and you're sticking the swab up your nose, and she's like, no, you got to swirl it around. Of course, I'm crying like a baby now because I'm sticking the thing so far up my nose. Stick it up the other side of your nose, and you put it back in the package, and you roll it back in like it's a $50 bill that you're depositing in the bank. And then 24 hours later, you're in the system. And so, I don't know. We've been tested probably 8 or 10 times. Like when they had the stadium open, we were going just to make sure we were negative before we came down here. And so I got the positive back. And so in the next couple of days after that, I was like on my ass. I had a 99 or 100 temperature. You lose your sense of smell and taste. And
well, you did.
And I realized I lost my sense of smell when one of the dogs peed in the bathroom, and I was on the ground spraying the Clorox, and I was spraying it, and I'm spraying it, and I'm spraying it. And I know I can't smell anything.
I woke
and
up in
she's
the
sleeping
middle
and she's
of
like,
the night.
the
Like,
hell's-
what is all that
did you
bleach smell?
the house? And I'm like, I can't smell anything. The
Ugh.
dog peed and I cleaned it up. And
Because we were in different, we
yeah,
separated the house
Yeah.
and we were in different parts of the house to maintain
I think you
that.
slipped me the COVID pill so you didn't have to sleep in the same bed with me. So, you know, and she comes back from vacation and right off the bat, I've got the COVID.
No,
So,
not right off the bat.
yeah.
It was
And
days
so
later.
other than that, it's total dehydration and it's a lot of nose sniffling. But you know, I never felt like I had to go to the hospital or felt like I was going to die. You feel like you're wasting days away just laying in
well,
bed.
you lost a couple days.
And I
You were
lost
out.
8 pounds, of course. And then Sunday, I probably shouldn't have mowed the lawn for 2 hours and worked out in the garage and then went for a bike ride. I think that made it worse. I probably should have just rested that entire day. I
And
think that made it last
For
a
the
little
record,
longer.
I did hound you about not doing that, about
Yeah.
taking it slow.
You know,
All right,
sometimes
I don't think people want to hear any more of this.
they don't.
No.
I think people are there. When we were having a very riveting water conversation with the chairman of the board, everybody half the group was paying attention to what Kevin was saying, and the other half, including your dad, were arguing over the vaccine on Facebook. So
geez.
the
Okay.
you know the vaccine thing is it is what it is. So I mean, it's just shitty. The whole thing is shitty that it's going
All
on.
right.
So but thank you everybody, and thanks to Kevin for coming in.
Yes.
And we're glad to be back. Episode number 176 in the can. John Lalo is here. Oh, yes, we have free koozies for people that want them. We have hats. We have
Which aren't
bloomers.
free,
We
but
just ordered some special bloomers that have my no, we didn't order that. But thank you everybody. We are done, and we will see you again next week. Oh, I got to play the music. You see, I forgot how to do everything. You can go, dear. I
Okay.
could say goodbye to the audience. Sometimes they just want to hear me anyway. We're going to be back next week. Popeye Palooza is returning, so we're going to have. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Kristen and Jim, and all you people that weren't paying attention to the show, but were arguing about the vaccine. And I hope everybody stays healthy out there. And so Popeye Palooza is back. So Popeye's going to be in next week. And we've got tons of great guests lined up over the next 7,000 episodes because we're not going anywhere, people. So enjoy your life and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.